Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Cyber Risk in Governance. Thank you for taking time out and being here today. My name is Zinkirukai Menoho, and I'm the Senior Manager, Cybersecurity, Privacy and Resilience at PwC Nigeria. I will be your host for today's proceedings. Today, we are grabbing a topic straight from the headlines with a focus on cybersecurity leadership. You see, directors and business leaders can add tremendous value as their companies struggle to tackle cyber risk. So the purpose for today's session is to bring together top experts and business leaders who share their illuminating views on cyber risk oversight. There will be a profound presentation and an interesting panel discussion. Our goal really is that you leave here with leadership behaviors that will improve your organizational performance and provide you with the competitive edge that you need to navigate in these unprecedented times. Just a little housekeeping before we get started. Please mute your microphone, and would love to hear from you. So we'll be running a live Q&A session during the panel discussions and at the end of the webinar. So if you have any questions, please just type that into the Q&A box. Don't use the chat box for your questions. Put your name and organization, and don't forget to put who you'd like to answer your question. And if you miss anything, don't worry. You'll get the on-demand recording when it's available. Lastly, our questions will be handled on a first-come, first-served basis. So I'll apologize in advance just in case we do not get to your questions. And now, before I hand over to one of our distinguished speakers, Mrs. Wumi Adetokunbo Ajayi, I'd like to welcome the President of the Institute of Directors. He's unavoidably absent, but we'll be having our opening remarks soon. Thank you. So I'll just move on to the next thing on the agenda. The President, IOD Nigeria, is not available, so we'll move on to the next thing, and that is the poll. So one of the things that we will do is to answer a series of questions. I'm going to kickstart the first one soon. Can we launch the poll, tech team? So if you look, ladies and gentlemen, if you look at your chat box on the right, you will see a link in blue. Click on it. And if you click on it, it takes you to a place where you need to turn on notifications and then vote your choice. The actual question is, have you ever been hacked? Have you ever been hacked? It's a yes or a no. Have you ever been hacked?
Ikiru, sorry, what people can see is the other poll, or have they been able to see the poll you're referring to?
Have you ever been hacked? Yes. Have you ever been hacked? I can see that. Can someone please confirm in the chat box if you can see this question? Okay. Someone says no. Tech team, are we having issues? Okay, that's the poll. So please go to the chat box on the right. You'll see a link in blue. Click on it. Okay, it's showing now. Thank you. So we've got feedback that it's showing. Thank you. Please click on that link. You see it in blue. Thank you. Once you click on it, it takes you to a place where you need to turn on notifications. And then vote your choice, please. That's the first question. Have you ever been hacked? Okay. The results are coming out. Thank you. I can see many people are taking the polls. Okay. As you can probably see, many people have been hacked, and that's interesting. That's interesting. About 50%, 54% now. Thank you. So we will talk about this in detail during our presentation. Can we move to the next question? So you automatically see the second question come up. We would launch a second poll and run through the process again. The second question is, has your organization ever been hacked? Some say, I don't know. Please answer the second question. Has your organization ever been hacked? Thank you. I see many of you are answering. So about 38% say, I don't know. About 38% say no. And yes, 29%. So these are very interesting results. It's revealing, and we'll talk about this during our presentation. Please make sure. Okay, someone says you can't see the link. The link has been put there again. You see it in blue. Can you see it in blue, please? Mr. Charles. Thank you. Okay, thank you, everyone. For those of you just joining us, welcome again. I'd like to introduce today's first speaker, who is going to talk to us about cyber risk in governance. Right after her presentation, our esteemed panel will unpack the cyber leadership behaviors, why, and how boards should lead. I believe that we had about 500 people registered for this session, and that is an amazing turnout. A proof that people are concerned about risk oversight and looking for a way to navigate this multi-dimensional area. Our speaker, Wumi, is a partner leading the digital risk and cybersecurity practice in PwC Nigeria. With over 23 years of industry and consulting experience, she has supported many top-tier firms across various sectors of the economy. Wumi has provided assurance and advisory services to over 40% of the companies quoted on the Nigerian Stock Exchange and 88% of the commercial banks in Nigeria. She has several multinational manufacturing, energy, aviation, and telecommunications experience. She has served many of these companies as well as government institutions. She's a member of the expert group on cybersecurity inaugurated by the Senate Committee on ICT and Cybercrime. She's also recognized as one of the top 50 women in cybersecurity Africa. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me to welcome Mrs. Wumi Adetokunbo for her presentation.
Thank you, Nku. Good morning, everyone. Can I please confirm the screen? Nku, can you please confirm if my screen?
Yes, I can see it.
Yes.
Yes, I can see it.
Fantastic. So once again, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us this morning. It's afternoon, actually. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. I hope you're all keeping safe. And first, I want to thank everyone who's made this possible, from the IOD to Mr. Okeria and all the other panelists. So without much ado, I'm going to go straight into the presentation. I think you said the main thrust of this presentation is to talk about cyber risk governance. We want to consider why cyber risk should be governed from the boardroom. I think that a lot of people will ask, well, we have CISOs in charge of cybersecurity, and we have functional teams in charge. Why is there a need to start having conversations about leading from the front? So before we go on to do all that, I want to ask and ask us to consider first, is cyber risk even important at all? I think that's a question that we must settle before we go any further. And that's because, obviously, members of the board are usually very busy people. And so anything that must be brought to their attention must be of sufficient importance. So first, let's talk about, I think I've moved too fast. Cybercrime is all over the news. If you open a newspaper, if you leaf through any document today, you will hear about cybercrime, one form of cybercrime or the other. And I have a few examples on the screen for you to see. I have things about INEC site hacked, Nigerian Law School website hacked, shadow kill hackers, East Johannesburg, South Africa's Liberty, all being suffers cyber.
Hello, Wumi. We seem to have lost you there. Perhaps you put off your video so that we just listen through.
Okay, let me try and do that. Just bear with me.
Yes, yes, it is. Okay, so you can go back to the last 2-3 slides and continue with the presentation. Thank you. Okay, so while Wumi is trying to, so we have a little bit of technical issues, or before Wumi comes up,
I am back here.
it'll be good to. Okay, you're back. Okay, thank you.
And I'll try not to share my video now. So can you hand over control? Have you been? So can you please hand over control to me? So have you handed control over to me? Okay, I'll continue with the conversations. Thank you for your understanding. So I'll just carry on because of time. We have talked about cybercrime being all over the news. The World Economic Forum also says that something to create some form of worry for companies. In the 2019-2020 Global Risk Perception Survey, that's the survey here, it indicated that increased cyber attacks and data fraud due to a sustained shift in working patterns is a source of worry for organizations. So the World Economic Forum confirms, or at least thinks so. Now, this worry or this state has been worsened by the state of COVID-19. So the Interpol, which is the International Police Organization, carried out a survey across different continents. And what they were trying to find out was to determine if any organization had suffered a cyber attack as a result of COVID-19. The pie chart that you see on your left shows the number of respondents, or percentage of respondents from the different continents that indicated that they had suffered some form of cyber attack as a result of COVID-19. You would see that in Africa, there's 17% of respondents indicating that they had suffered some form of attack. And if you read, one of the comments by some of the partners of Interpol, they had indicated that 907,000 spam messages were sent between January 2020 and April 24, 2020. On the right, you'll see a number of vectors that were used to achieve these attacks, deliver these attacks. So you have malicious domains, you have malicious ransomware, you have phishing, scam, fraud, and obviously fake news. So I thought it was appropriate to talk a little bit about some of the cyber attacks that we have seen in this time during COVID-19. First, there are the donation scams, those email fraud campaigns designed to solicit donations for healthcare organizations that don't actually exist. So you have scammers impersonating the World Health Organization in emails and targeting the general public to channel donations to a fictitious fund that is under their control. You have mobile app related attacks that basically tied to contact tracing. As you all know, contact tracing is one of the mechanisms that have been put in place to limit the spread of COVID-19 by finding and testing all the people that infected people have come into contact with. But security researchers have discovered at least 12 malicious apps that pretended to be contact tracing apps, but really were downloading malware onto a user's device. Of course, there's been an increased incidence of distributor denial of service. You've seen phishing, spear phishing, and vishing. Spear phishing obviously targeting people on the board, which perhaps makes this discussion very, very topical. We've seen increased rates of ransomware. We've seen charity scams. We've seen malicious websites that were just set up to get authentication details from people. So there are various organizations and there are various things happening that can cause some level of concern for individuals. So as a person, obviously, when you hear all these things, you'll be concerned as a parent, as a father, as a mother. But is that enough for a business person? Should that bother you as a business person? And our perspective is, yes, it's fine to have all these incidents happening, but the key thing that matters as a business person, as someone who sits on the board, is that cyber risk is a business risk. Because you have responsibilities and fiduciary ones for that matter, to govern and lead your organizations into this uncertain future. And because of the significance of cyber risk, to tamper with, to make that future untenable, we believe that it is part of your core responsibilities to govern and manage cybersecurity and cyber risk from the boardroom. So I want to talk briefly about the impact, because it's easy to say these things and say it's a business risk. And somebody will just, what do you mean it's a business risk? What exactly do you mean by that? So we thought we should share some of the impact that the cyber attack can have on your business. Obviously, lost funds, that's straightforward. I think, we've heard all sorts of stories and buzz that create lots of buzz in the marketplace of organizations losing millions of dollars to fraudsters. So that's straightforward. And even as individuals, we have lost, people have been, have lost money. They have been hacked either by through their banks or through some other means. So that's clear. I think all the points are clear. The ones that people keep asking and speaking about is bankruptcy, which is the last point there. How can a cyber attack lead to bankruptcy? And I just want to talk about two examples. So there's a company here. Now, this company suffered a data breach, and the direct costs of the data breach were quite substantial. By the time this company was filing for bankruptcy, it was reported that IT consultancy had exceeded $400,000. The cost of mailing affected customers and other stakeholders and employees to comply with regulation had exceeded $3.8 million. Then there was litigation costs from class action lawsuits. There was breach of contract claim, a breach of contract claim. They had to incur costs to attend to government investigation. And then while they were going through all this, their website, their main channel for delivering and collaborating and contacting their customers was basically unavailable. So they weren't making money and they had all this cost. So they had no option, they had to file for bankruptcy. Company B opened in 1987. They have been around for a while. It's not a new entity. But in 2016, a ring of criminals who have user accounts and who also dealt in fraudulent gift cards for a variety of stores and companies gained access to the administrator's password. And using that password, they issued spending account cards, and some with limits as high as $5 million. So these cards act like credit cards for use with medical expenses. By the time the company realized that millions of dollars from cards fraudulently used for things as plastic surgery had come through. When creditors demanded payments, the company had to shut its doors because obviously you couldn't pay for all those expenses. So you see that those are examples because potentially a cyber attack can go and eat you at the nerve of your business and affect your ability to generate revenue, while at the same time presenting costs that you need to fulfill. There have been different reports with different kinds of statistics on the rates of failure, particularly for SMEs. And there have been debates of whether it's 10% or 20% or 15%. To my mind, I don't think it matters whether it's 5% or 10% of companies who have gone into bankruptcy because of a cyber breach. I think what matters is that as a board member, you have to say, it wouldn't be on my watch. If any company is going to go into bankruptcy, it wouldn't be a company or an entity that I sit on the board. Large companies usually don't go out of business from a cybersecurity breach. They will often get by, they'll sack the CIO, sack the CISO, fire, if possible, the MD, and they'll make other arrangements, or maybe they'll get new investors or get a credit line. But for small and medium-sized organizations, it is really a big deal. And I thought that, sometimes to bring it home, we looked at a report from the Net Intelligence Organization. So they do this cyber claims report. And from 2019, they said insurance companies had received claims of about $790 million. And obviously, you know that cybersecurity insurance is not yet a popular tool. Not many organizations have cybersecurity insurance. But even for the ones that have, they had received claims of $790 million. 4% of those claims were from large companies, whereas 96% were from small to medium enterprises. And I thought to just highlight some of the costs that were claimed for. And these, if you recall, they're similar to what we had shown on a previous slide. So you have breach costs, you have crisis services costs, you have legal and regulatory costs, and you probably have settlement costs also. And also, these are in the public domain. Just to provide some context about the impact that a cyber breach can have, we heard about Yahoo that lost $350 million from its share value when Verizon was paid to buy it in 2017. Equifax incurred up to $1.35 billion as breach cost settlements. They're now things, to address a breach that they had suffered. And you see other entities have suffered to one extent or the other. Next, the last one here, had suffered, I don't have it here, $200 million from the breach that they had suffered as a result of the NorthStar ransomware attack. $300 million is not small. Like we say in Nigeria, it's not small things. It's a lot of money for a cyber attack. And in Nigeria, where we have the dearth of information, we don't have a lot of information. But even from my experience, we have organizations who have been fined, even though there are conversations around those fines, but they have been fined by the regulator for one breach or the other. We have organizations who are incurring investigation costs that they would otherwise not have incurred because of a cyber attack or a breach. At least these investigations are not exactly true. And we have organizations who have had their cost of compliance increased because potential investors or partners, particularly outside of the country, are asking for specific types of audits that the organization would not have done or didn't plan to do. And obviously, the organization has to pay for those audits. And then you have people who are claiming settlement costs from organizations in Nigeria who are asking their third party to pay the losses that they have incurred. So the third party is facing that potential cost. So we see that it really hits you in where it hurts when it comes to a successful cyber attack. I hope you can see this. PwC carried out a global economic crime and fraud survey in 2020, and cybercrime is the second item in this chart. Cybercrime increased by 34% in 1 year. I think that's food for thought. In that same chart, that's not showing here, but in that same chart, we have where they have shown the most disruptive fraud events by industry. And cybersecurity and cybercrime rates number 1 or 2 across all industries. So in consumer markets, cybercrime was number 3. In financial services, cybercrime was number 2. In government and public sector, cybercrime was number 1. In health industry, cybercrime was number 1. In industrial products and marketing, cybercrime was number 2. In technology, media, and telecommunications, cybercrime was number 2. Now, as a board, so you have the organizations that are susceptible to cyber attacks, and we discussed the potential impacts of a successful attack. But what about you as a board member? As a board member, you yourself, you're a target, and you're a source of risk to the organization. And this is because board members or senior executives are often the target of a cyber attack, especially through spear phishing. And why are you targeted? It's because you have influence and authority within the organization. Your orders are obeyed quickly. This influence and authority may also give you access to valuable access, money, information. And as board members, you can ask for security controls to be suspended. You yourself may bypass controls without being questioned. So therefore, you present a present and real risk to the organization that you need to be aware of. Obviously, there's the buzz all over social media and other forms of media about Twitter, the Twitter attack, and the hack of prominent people's accounts. So the question is, I mean, we're talking, but will this trend continue? Is this a trend that will continue? Is this something to worry about? So we've seen it, it's been happening, people are suffering attacks, people are incurring significant amounts of money, people are losing funds, people are sometimes going out of business. But will this trend continue? And we thought before we can determine whether this trend will continue in the future, it's important to say, okay, what are the reasons for the current status or the current trend? Because that will help us answer the question of whether those conditions will continue to exist in the future. And the first thing here is an increased use of public cloud. Or maybe just first to say, just that we are more technologically advanced than ever before. If you think back to where we were 5 years ago, 10 years ago, you would agree that the rate of the pace of technological advancement is very, very rapid. Then think about the increased use of public cloud. You know, nowadays we all take it for granted that we can have access to documents online, we can share documents easily, we can on the go access to anything when we want it. And it doesn't matter the time, it doesn't matter the country we're in, 24/7, online, real time. So we take these things for granted. But the use of public cloud also presents increased risk of cyber attacks. Obviously, there's the extension of the corporation, and by that we mean that the boundaries are falling. In order to meet with the demands of your customers, in order to accelerate in your delivery of services and solutions, there is that urgent need to collaborate. There's that urgent need to work with other people because you can't have all the answers. You're waiting until you can deliver or you can have all the competencies to deliver the service end to end. You'll be dead before you can do that. So you have to partner, you have to collaborate. Therefore, you have third parties that you're working with. Now, these third parties themselves have other third parties. So as an organization, you may have third parties, fourth parties, fifth parties in your value chain that are providing services to you. And sometimes they're opaque. You don't even know they exist. And they present a danger to you because if there's a failure or cyber risk or a cyber weakness that's been exploited in your third party within your third party, it may come back to affect you. And we see that a number of times, even in Nigeria. Of course, there is the ease of attack. We saw recently was all over, well, I think, social media and electronic media about the students that launched an attack against a news outlet in Nigeria, an undergraduate in a university. So there's some ease of attack, and there's also cybersecurity as a service, attack as a service, where people are, there's this, if you like, rapidly growing services economy in cybercrime. So you have vendors in this ecosystem. They develop the code, they develop the services that enable criminals who don't have technical skills. They have services where they will install malware onto PCs, and then they sell access to those PCs to criminals. So they themselves are not exploiting, they're selling those services, those bad access. They're selling subscriptions to malware and ransomware tokens. They're launching the future denial of service attacks. So they will, you know, if I want to launch a DDoS on, I don't know, IOD, for instance, not that I plan to, I don't even have to sit down and start thinking about how I would do it. The organizations that are providing stress stack services, so they will sell on-demand attacks. I just have to go to them to say, please help me attack this organization, and they will do it. And recently, 2 men were arrested in Israel who were providing DDoS services on demand to criminals. Their online advertisements, you know, of these services, their online adverts of training facilities for those who are interested. And more than anything, there's also the attacker's risk-reward imbalance. The attacker, you know, if I'm an attacker, I look at it and say, what's the risk that I'll be caught? That will seem very low, but the reward can be quite significant. In fact, the reward can be life-changing. And so that helps me make my decision in terms of whether I should get into this business or not. So we see that those conditions exist and they promote the rate of attacks that we're seeing currently. But what about in the future? Do those conditions still exist in the future? Will they continue to exist? Again, the World Economic Forum has done, you know, a projection 10 years from now, and they've identified top 10 risks by likelihood and impact over the next 10 years. And you can see highlighted data fraud or theft and cyber attacks. They're amongst the first top 10 risks over the next 10 years. In addition, the Interpol has done some projections, particularly related to coronavirus and the likely recessions and economic realities that will face people in the near future. And they're also projecting that the rate of cybercrime will increase. So we conclude that this risk will continue in the future. And we have other factors that we think will exacerbate that in the future. And one of them is the rise of artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence has been deemed as the new race for the new war. Researchers and defenders are investigating and developing AI tools. Attackers are also developing AI tools, you know, just to ramp up the speed of attack. So because of this investment in AI, we think that the rate of cyber attacks will continue to increase. we talked about 5G, 5G, just the bandwidth, the speed of transaction processing, the speed that data can be consumed will also affect cybercrime. There's a globalization of cybercrime, obviously. There's increased competition, and that basically means companies will compete with each other. There's speed to go to market. There's speed to get to the customer, and therefore that also puts pressure in terms of whether companies will spend the time to do the appropriate due diligence that they should have done. Then there's a thing about the cybersecurity skills gap. That is a gap that continues to grow. And in a place like Nigeria, where we're losing a lot of talent to other countries, it's a real worry. So when you have that to all the other points that we had discussed before, we can consider the increased levels of Nigerian attackers. Nigerian attackers are becoming more proficient, and they're becoming, they're well known all over the world. And people may say, well, that's them. They're not coming to Nigeria, or they're focused on where they can get foreign exchange. Yes, but then what will happen there? There will be different layers. Yeah, some people will focus on the international market, and some people will focus on the local market. So you have the Nigeria Silver Terrier Group and the Nigeria Silent Sterling Group. These are groups that have been monitored by Palo Alto for the past 5 years. And what Palo Alto is basically saying is that these groups are developing or improving or enhancing their proficiency. In 2014, they were doing online education, trying to get through tools. By 2017, they had identified where they could buy sophisticated tools, and they were using those tools to launch attacks. By 2019, they themselves were developing tools to launch attacks, very advanced and sophisticated tools. And because the reward is significant, they can invest the time, which perhaps is not what many organizations will do in terms of equipping their staff. So we just to bring it home, the kind of attacks or the kind of financial losses that have been reported that are tied to Nigerian fraudsters, if you like, allegedly. So you have the New York-based law firm who lost about $922,000. You had the attempt to steal from an English Premier League soccer club. The fraudulent transfers from a foreign institution in Malta, approximately 13 million euros. So you can see that we're not talking about small amounts of money here. Actual losses by a particular team. When I say team, we mean a particular attack team. They had cost a loss of $18 million within a couple of years, while they had attempted actually $30 million attack. These are just examples of the kind of money. And I think when you juxtapose that with the clear reality, practical reality, that nobody wants to have a delayed gratification anymore. Everybody wants to blow right now, immediately. And this seems to be like a quick and fast way for them to do that. We just thought to present the various means that attackers are using. And you see that ransomware, deepfake, malvertising, data breaches, privileged access management, malware, denial of service, insider threat critical, privilege escalation, identity theft. These are just some, they're not exhaustive, but just the various levers that people in charge of security have to manage and watch out for in trying to defend the organization. So how organizations responding now? A lot of organizations are spending time and money and training in awareness, in education. We have regulations there. In education, which is good. A lot of organizations are complying with different types of regulation, including the NICTA data protection regulation. They're certifying to various standards, information security standards. We have CISOs who have been appointed, particularly in the financial services, where the CBN has mandated that appointment. Then we have all forms of technology implementation, whether in end user protection, whether it's in threat monitoring, whether it's in firewall monitoring. There are all sorts of implementations going on. And then we have periodic vulnerability assessment as one of the responses that organizations are taking to respond to the risk of cyber threats. But there's a gap. There's a gap. Because despite the fact that a lot of investments and lots of funds and money and time and blood and sweat is going into the management of cyber, there's a gap. Because organizations are still being attacked. And we've identified a number of the factors that we think lead to this gap. The first thing is ineffective reporting. And the board isn't getting the right type of reporting. A lot of times the reporting is very, very high level, very, very sometimes technical, full of technical jargon that the board cannot understand. Sometimes there isn't even any reporting. Even abroad, there was a survey done by PwC, and the outcome of that survey was that 67% of organizations say that they don't tell the board, they don't report everything to the board because they just don't want to answer questions. So there's some gap in that reporting, and therefore it limits the ability of the board to provide the kind of oversight that they should be providing. Also, we find that there's a lot of compliance going on. So we have organizations who are certified to all sorts of standards, which are important, yeah? But standards are generic. And standards sometimes, I know you have to modify them to fit your purpose and to fit the context of your situation. So being compliant is not the same thing as being secure or as being protected. And we've gone to an organization and you're trying to carry out a review, and they have certified to hold the leading standards, but you see gaps all over the place. So they are certified, but security is not by design. It's not been embedded into business as usual. So when it's time to do the audit, because it's a requirement to do the audit, because the CISO doesn't want to go to his boss or her boss to say, I haven't been able to achieve certification. The focus is on being compliant. And when you go to the board and they have those conversations with the board, and the board even asks, how are we doing about security? You hear them, people bringing out, yeah, we've done ISO this, ISO that, PCI, we've done NICTA data protection. And then the board members assume that means the organization is protected. We've talked about skills gap. We've talked about, technology-centric, starting from the point of technology, starting from the point of what do I need to protect the network? What do I need to protect my domain name server? What do I need to protect my web server? Instead of coming from the point of the business, what do I need to protect the business? What are my critical activities? If I'm a real estate organization, for instance, what are the things that are critical to me as a real estate business? What will limit the access of my project manager? How will my project manager consistently get access to the surveys and drawings that they need to manage the project? How can I ensure that I continue to pay my vendors so that my projects are not delayed? How can I ensure that I do not pay inappropriate or invalid invoices, fraudulent invoices?
Sorry, we've gone to 53 minutes, supposed to be 20 minutes. I think the rest can come through question and answer so that we'll make it more interactive. Or what do you think?
Absolutely. I didn't know. I thought someone would tell me when my time was up. So I think I'll just wrap up the slide, and then we can take on the questions, and then you can start with the moderation. Does that work? So please take over. I think the other comments can come in through moderation or question and answers.
Can you finish up on this this slide, then we'll take over?
No, I think we should just take over. I think the question or my 5 comments can take it. Let's go on.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So, ladies and gentlemen, moving on to the panel session, we are extremely lucky to have snagged a wonderful moderator who is a renowned business leader, Mr. Austin Okere, and he will be anchoring today's panel discussion. Mr. Austin is the founder of CWG PLC and the also Leadership Academy, which mentors businesses and entrepreneurs for geometric growth. He has an MBA from IESE Business School and over 25 years entrepreneurial experience. He has got numerous awards, the Lifetime Entrepreneurial Achievement Award by the American University of Nigeria. He's also received Nigeria's Computer Society Presidential Special Award. He has been named the ICT Personality of the Year and ICT Man of the Year, ICT Man of the Decade by ICT Watch. His company was recognized as a global growth company by the World Economic Forum, and it is the largest security listing in the technology sector in the Nigerian Stock Exchange. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Mr. Austin Okere to handle the panel discussion. Over to you, Mr. Austin.
All right, thanks very much. Let's try and wake people up a bit, because sometimes on the webinar you just sit and listen and you get disengaged. And Kira, I'd like to make a few changes. I'd like us to go to the polls just so that we can get people involved. So we are not talking at people, we are talking with people. Can you go to the poll where we're going to be asking them about their confidence in the security of the organization, please? And can you administer the polls? So this is asking about your level of confidence. Wumi has given a very brilliant presentation, and she's talked about all the challenges. There's been a very lively discussion going on in the chat as well. But at the end of it, how confident are you in your organization's capabilities in cybersecurity? Nkiru, I believe that being an online poll, people are seeing the results as they're displayed.
Yes, they are. Yes, they are.
It's quite interesting from what I can see. Between no and somewhat, we have 62%. So 38% are comfortable and confident in the organization's capabilities in cyber security, but it's changed a bit. So 41%, and now it's changing. So let's see if more votes will change the skew. All right. So we're going to go with what we have now and disregard the ones that are coming. So we have about 55% that say no, they do not have confidence or somewhat. And we have about 43% that say that they do. That tells its own story. Can you launch the second one that is also checking on the weakest link? The weakest link in Kiru. So what do you believe is the weakest link in cybersecurity? Is it people? Is it processes? Is it technology, or something other than these three? Okay, so I think the unanimous answer is tending towards people. It's tending towards people. And if you would listen to Wumi's presentation, it seems as if we spend more money on equipment and technology than people. And meanwhile, the weakest link, according to your vote this afternoon, is people. So towards the question and answer and towards the end, it'd be interesting to then look at what we could do to mitigate this weakest link. I'm not sure that we knew or realized that it was people until this poll, because we spend money on all sorts of cyber software, but then your poll suggests that only 12% of the weakest link is either process or technology. Isn't that interesting? All right, so welcome back to a lively and interactive session. I'm not alone. I have two other people on the panel. I have Dr. Victoria Enafe. Dr. Enafe is the principal partner of Enafe Victoria & Co. She is an accountant, a forensic and investigative auditor, and a professional, a tax practitioner, a fraud examiner, and also, believe it or not, a philanthropist. She's a researcher and an author. She earned her MSc and PhD accounting degrees from the University of Costa Rica. And Dr. Enafe is a fellow of the Association of National Accountants of Nigeria and also of the Chartered Institute of Taxation. And she's a CPA in the United States of America, a member of the Chartered Institute of Finance and Accounting of the United Kingdom. So she knows her onions quite well. She has over 20 professional qualifications within and outside Nigeria. So you can see we can't list them all. Most importantly, Dr. Enafe is an author of the book titled Practical Steps to Forensic and Fraud Investigation. And she's probably the first Nigerian woman to write such a book. Dr. Enafe, you are welcome. It'll be interesting. It will be nice for people to see you if you can turn on your webcam so people can see you. And I also have the DG of NIFDA represented by Mr. Emmanuel Edet, who is the head of legal. But the DG, Mr. Kashifu Inua Abdullahi, is a MIT Sloan trained strategist, and he has over 15 years of experience in IT operations. Kashifu started his career at Galaxy Backbone, and in 2014, he was engaged as technology architect by the Central Bank of Nigeria, and it provided some that gave the CBN 360-degree view of our IT infrastructure. Dr. Kashifu joined NIFDA in 2017. Sorry, Mr. Kashifu joined NIFDA in 2017 as a technical advisor to the then DG and has successfully contributed to the agency's achievement of quite a lot of things. Specifically, Dr. Kashifu was instrumental in managing the execution of a strategy that increased ICT contribution to Nigeria's GDP. That's a good story. Dr. Kashifu, or Mr. Kashifu, was appointed as DG and CEO of NIFDA by the President and Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces Republic of Nigeria on 20th August 2019. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. I would be inviting you in a minute to give a brief opening, and then we'll dive straight into the question and answer. And please do not use the chat box for your question and answer. I'm told that there's a QA box on the right side of your screen. It's in red. It has QA, and that's where you should drop your questions. And start dropping your questions now because they'll be compiled as we're going ahead, and then we'll look at them shortly. I'm also told, correct me Nkiru if I'm wrong, that you've extended the time for this webinar and it's no longer going to close at 3:30. Nkiru, can you update us on what time it will close?
Okay, so we have about 15 more minutes, so it will be 4:45.
All right. Now,
yes.
If you have time for 4:30, please extend by 15 minutes if you can. We'll do our best to make it as interactive as possible. Just share my thoughts before I call on the other my. In my view, cybersecurity has become the elephant in the room of our new digital world, as we have heard from eloquently presented by Wumi, and it has been exacerbated by this whole COVID pandemic. I believe that risk mitigation against cyber fraud is most effective in its dynamic and collaborative form. Dynamic because it requires a shared body of knowledge, and that body of knowledge should be consistently updated and available to all parties. In my view, there are two groups of organizations. When we started this webinar, we asked you, have you ever been hacked? 54% said yes. Has your organization ever been hacked? 31% says yes. Well, I want to surprise you about my own pronouncement. In my view, there are two groups of organizations. Those that know they have been hacked and those that do not know yet. So I'm very suspicious about that 31%. And maybe when you go back, check again. I think that cybersecurity is out of control everywhere. It is estimated that 2 billion records were stolen in 2017, and about 100 million people lost health insurance data in 2017. And the funny thing is that this data was lost months before it was reported. The Chartered Institute of Forensics and Investigation Professionals has revealed that in the last 10 years, Nigeria has lost about 5.5 trillion naira to fraud, corruption, and cyber crimes. What does this figure mean? In context, this is about half of Nigeria's 2020 expenditure budget, which is about 10.22 trillion. So half of our budget is lost to this elephant in the room. Wumi touched upon this about what happened with Twitter recently with the hacking of prominent celebrities and using their accounts to ask for money, which they were successful at doing. While it is interesting that nation states engineer attacks, people say China, people say Russia, people say any other ones, but I think many companies that are hacked claim it's state-sponsored because it puts the regulator at bay. According to the United Nations, 80% of attacks come from a highly organized and ultra-sophisticated criminal gangs, and they steal $500 billion annually. For context, the amount they steal annually is larger than the GDP of 160 countries, and not just any countries, including Ireland, Denmark, and Portugal. So that should give you an idea of the scale. And I think risk mitigation cannot be a competitive strategy for any organization. To think otherwise would be very illusory because the nature of cyber fraud can be linked to an elephant. People at the side may think it's a worm. People at the trunk may think it's a snake. People at the tail may think it's a monkey. And people at the leg may think it's a tree trunk. It is only when you have crafted the full accurate picture in which the fraud can manifest that you can effectively deal with it or combat it. And this is why there is a need for consistent collaboration and open and transparent reporting. In my view, the reporting should be similar to the way we are currently fighting COVID-19 and how Ebola was staged. Imagine what will happen if patients hate the fact that they had COVID and hospitals hate the fact that there were COVID patients in there. And this is what we do with cybercrime. No organization reports it or reports it adequately. I think we need a dashboard for cyber crimes and cyber criminals, similar to the Johns Hopkins dashboard for COVID globally and in each country. I think this is the only way we can sanitize the system and quarantine the bad guys. If you look at those chain emails, 419 or OBT letters that were very popular and a lot of people fell victim to, this was how it was contained, because everybody reported it, so everybody knew where the next attack was going to come from. Delete the next mail that tells you that there's 100 million oil money somewhere that we can share. I also believe that we need to change the economic for the bad guys. Everyone needs to respond openly and quickly to stop the threat in its tracks. And this is why there's a need for organizations to come together to collaborate on research and research past breaches and document them, and also comprehensively report current breaches to learn from them in order to prevent future breaches. And that's the most important thing, preventing the breaches. Because if we do that, then we're going to make the economics very unpalatable for the people that are in this thing. And I think that the most vulnerable organizations are banks, and banks especially need to open up and share what is in their private data hub. If they share the information in their private data hub, all of us will be wiser, because that is where a lot of the attacks happen. Unfortunately, keeping hacking information close to your chest, it portends a vicious cycle, a cycle of covering up and being hacked, because you are empowering the hacker to cause more damage to you by not reporting and exposing them and their future hacking plans. The bad guys are moving fast, and we have to move faster. We have to change the thinking in the security industry in order to make cybercrime not pay. We have to share information on what is happening, and as much as possible in real time before the strike happens. Now, this is where I have a problem, and we saw that in the poll we just did. We spend so much money in CISA, in equipment, in antivirus, but you yourself said that as much as over 80% of the weakest link is people. Let me tell you, hiring the most accomplished CISA or buying the most expensive antivirus in itself will not do so much for any organization, not least the banks. It is like having the best pizza toppings without the base pizza bread. If you know what to cook, how to cook, you know what I'm talking about. Or it's like having the best machine learning algorithm without having big data, because machine learning only learns with big data. Even when you believe you have secured your fortress, your organization, and we may touch on this, what about third-party companies that you are working with and you are giving them APIs to also connect to your system? So ladies and gentlemen, I think we should focus a lot of our efforts in the people part of tackling cyber crime, and not just spending money needlessly on just buying the equipment. And this is where I think I will call on Dr. Enakpe to also share her 5-minute thoughts. Dr. Enakpe, please. Dr. Enakpe? All right. So let's then go to Mr. Emmanuel Edet. Maybe Dr. Enakpe has dropped off. When she joins us, she will then share her own 5 minutes. Mr. Emmanuel Edet, if you're on, please, can you share your own thoughts in 5 minutes?
Thank you very much, Mr. Kerr. You know, the important thing coming from a policy standpoint on this issue is the amount of ignorance that is actually out there. And many people do not understand that one of the primary failures in terms of dealing with cybersecurity issue is the social engineering part of it. The weakest link has always been the people, because most of the times we are a little bit careless regarding how we use company resources, for example, how we use devices that are provided for us for work. For example, your office gives you a phone and your children play games on it. You don't know the site to visit. You just walk away. You share your computers. You enable your browsers to have access to your passwords so that they will keep you logged in all the time. All these are very risky activities and attitudes towards cybersecurity. So from a policy standpoint, the greatest work that any board can do is absolutely awareness. That is the most important thing. You can buy, like the moderator said, you can buy all the greatest forms of security. But once you are unable to manage how people access this security, then it becomes a big problem. There's also the mighty big problem of third-party risk. I think the critical place any board should start in dealing with cybersecurity is risk assessment. What really are we using cyber information for? What really are we using? What are the systems and processes that are running and totally depending on cyber infrastructure? It's very important that this issue should be addressed. I think I will stop there for now. I'm having a lot of background noise. Let me deal with it. So thank you very much. I'll contribute further shortly.
Okay, Mr. Austin, we can't hear you.
All right, thanks very much, Mr. Emmanuel Edet. Is Dr. Enakwe on now? I think we're still missing Dr. Enakwe. So we'll go straight into the question and answer. We'll be pleased for your questions in the question and answer box. I think we have some. Why am I being removed? We don't have, I don't see any questions. Nkiru, can you see any questions? If you can see, can you read out them?
Okay. The first one I have is, can you talk a bit more about the recent Twitter hack? What could they have done differently to prevent it?
All right, fantastic. So Wumi is also on the panel, and Wumi spoke about the Twitter hack. She's spoken from what we saw, a lot of quantitative data on those. So I will direct this question to Wumi. Wumi, what is about this Twitter hack and what could we have done differently?
Well, so generally to address the problem, you've got to know the cause, don't you? Twitter came out and said the attack, the main vector was through scare phishing of some of their key staff. But they haven't shared more information, I don't think. And scare phishing is really about targeting the individual. How it happened, we don't have that information apart from the fact that they say it's scare phishing. So in terms of, for me, I think education is always important. Whether the phishing was through their emails, for instance, and I would expect Twitter to have technologies to like your DMAP technologies to address that. I think the point to be made, more than anything, is that cyber attacks are not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. So it's not so problematic that Twitter was hacked. If Twitter isn't hacked, I don't know who will be hacked. So if you're a prominent organization, expect to be hacked. The important thing is that you know about it quickly and you're able to respond as efficiently and as quickly as possible. So that's what I can say. I'm sure they're educating their staff. I'm sure they have lots of awareness going on. I expect that they have the right technology. It's really about how responsive they were. So, for instance, they didn't share enough information with you. People were left to speculate. So that might be a lesson in terms of how you don't respond when something happens to you.
All right, thank you very much. And I think that the most important thing is be careful the information you put out there. If you look at sorry, we can hear some background noise. Okay, look at the people that were hacked. These are people that you can really easily find information on them, either because they are on Wikipedia. I looked at some Wikipedia pages of some of the celebrities here in Nigeria. It's scary. It tells you the date they were born, in which city they were born, who they are married to, how many children, their names. I mean, everything you need to know to penetrate this person is boldly demonstrated on Wikipedia. And that's, in my view, why the hack demography was in the celebrity category. And I don't say we shouldn't do social media, but I think that social media is good to share ideas, maybe to share experiences, but I think there is a line between sharing and total exposure, so that you are naked totally, that there's nothing anybody can guess about you, they know it. I'm hoping that Wikipedia will not publish people's passwords because the information there is too complete. That's my own view. Inkiru, any other questions? You're on mute, Inkiru.
Okay. Okay, so I have something here around pertinent questions that board members should ask, perhaps their technical team and the security leaders within the organization. Any other questions?
You're muted.
Okay, so I just read out the question. Can you hear me now, please?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so this one is around the pertinent questions board members should ask their security leaders or their CISOs.
Okay, great. What kind of questions should we ask the security leaders or CISOs? I wonder if Mr. Emmanuel Edet is still with us and the background noise is a bit less. If not, then we will take the question. Mr. Emmanuel Edet.
I'm still there.
What should board members ask their CISOs and their security teams? What should they be concerned about?
I think basically what they should, the first thing they should be concerned about is to understand the risk which the company is facing from the use of information technology related devices. The board should actually take steps to know what risk are we exposing ourselves to, because most companies are based on reputation and not just your activities and the products you sell. Your reputation also matters. And then once you understand the risk, you also take steps to mitigate this risk. That's also very important, because if you do not mitigate this risk and learn to understand and have a disaster recovery plan, it's going to be extremely difficult for you to recover. I mean, the presentation actually highlighted some of the very serious risks that is involved. Your company could even close as a result of a cyber attack. And then the next question I think they should ask is, do we have the competent people in place to deal with any issue that arise? And then they can also as well learn how to build networks and provide unlimited awareness. There are several standards outside there, the ISO standards on corporate governance on information technology, ISO 38500, and then there's also the control objectives for information technology related assets, COBIT, which ensures quality control and reliability for information systems in an organization. So in summary, understand the risk, do what you can to mitigate the risk, and make sure that the people are actually aware of the kind of risk that's involved. Because these days, we talked about cloud computing. You have a lot of third-party service providers that may not actually be within your purview. In fact, you can, I think some time ago, Taxify had an issue because a third-party processor for their payment system was actually hacked. And nobody listened to the fact that it wasn't Taxify that was hacked. Everybody screamed, oh, Taxify has been hacked, your payment information is out there. So these are the kind of questions I think board should ask, because the board bear the responsibility of the business, and they should ensure that the information technology systems in any organization has quality control, reliability, and security. That is what runs every modern business these days. So that's my take on that.
Mr. Ede, thank you very much. I think the deeper question for myself is, how can the board contribute? How can the board contribute to this readily available information, the type of which we see on John Hopkins' website? And Mr. Ede, I'm coming to you again. If a risk happens and I'm on the board of a bank, my first fear as a board member is, wow, what's going to happen to our reputation? My second fear is, what fines will the regulator put on me? My third fear is, wow, what if there's a class action? What if all the people that have suffered this kind of hack sue me and then I'm going to go bankrupt? What do you think should be the position of the law when I voluntarily report that I've been hacked? Should these three things be put aside, or do they form part of the law and they must be carried out? Mr. Ede, the legal expert.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kerr. The issue here would be, as at the time you were hacked, were you in compliance with the law and regulations? I think that's one of the things that would mitigate your risk and would mitigate the impact of whatever legal consequences come. Normally, with your customers, you have some form of contract understanding, and security is part of those contracts. What if the issue had developed from the end of the customer? What if it was social engineering that was used to achieve the cybersecurity breach in your system? So I think another important thing is compliance. There are various rules and regulations which the various sector regulators have issued out to various companies. And the board should ensure that there is a form of compliance mechanism within the organization to ensure that nobody violates any of the rules and regulations. That's number one. Number two, on the issue of class action, I think it's part of the risk which should be addressed and evaluated as a governing board member. For reputation, I know you have to balance your reputation, because that may turn out to be the primary factor of your business. But there are also mechanisms set in place like computer emergency readiness and response teams, which Nigeria is currently trying to establish one in every sector. This would serve as a sort of close-knit reporting system that would provide the requisite support in case of any attack, and at the same time also keep some of the attack information quite confidential, because sometimes in trying to report an attack, you may inadvertently release information that will also cause further damage to your systems. So I think if the regulations are complied with, and believe me, I think we still need more regulations apart from what we have today. If the regulations are complied with, and there's a reporting system that provides confidence to all organizations that may have been hacked or attacked or have a cybersecurity breach, and as well as an opportunity to ensure that you're not open to lawsuits based on the contracts you have with your, should I say, constituency or customers, you would have a pretty robust framework to ensure cybersecurity. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that concise answer. May I ask if Dr. Enakpa is with us now? Dr. Enakpa? All right, still no. So, Wumi, I'm going to ask you a question from the dark. You know, in many Western countries, your transactions with your banker I'm asking you this question because when we asked, have you ever been hacked? 54% said yes, and many has come through their bank and their accounts, and usually they can't get any recourse. In many advanced countries, the bank has to prove that you are responsible for the loss, inadvertent loss of funds from your account. But here, when we go to open internet bank accounts, there's a small print that seems to suggest that you are waiving any right to sue or anything like that. So it seems as if because the onus is not on the bank, they don't do enough to put in enough processes and technology to protect us. And if the hack happens, they run away from refunding us if we are not at all part of the reason why it happened. What should be the position here?
Thank you, Mr. Kerry. Of course, I agree with you that our customer protection laws are very, very far behind what we find in other clients. And that's something we need to work on. Just to say our regulatory framework is very in its nascent stage. And that's why organizations like NITA, for instance, came up with data protection laws. So I think we're on the right trajectory. It's just that we're not where we should be. But I also know that banks spend quite a bit of time on incident response and dispute resolution. So they have systems for dispute resolution. They have teams that are involved in incident response, and they do all these investigations. The challenge most times is how do you demonstrate as a user or as a customer that that you did not share your PIN, for instance. That's usually the challenge, and that's where we need the regulator to come in, perhaps specify or strengthen the law. So if I, as a customer, have my bank card with me, or I have an account that is not even, that shouldn't have any debit card attached to it, and people are able to, one way or the other, link some cards to that account and begin to withdraw money from that account. How does the regulation protect me? If I have my card with me, how can I prove that I wasn't in Tanzania, where money is being withdrawn from my account? So there's some work to be done in terms of regulation. There's also some work to be done in terms of education. Because, for instance, last week, my house help was almost scammed. So someone called her and said to her, there's money being shared from the presidency because of COVID-19. Please bring your account number. And she gave the guy our account number. I was in a meeting. I was calling her to prepare breakfast for me. She didn't come. So I went downstairs. I was really upset. And then I saw her. She said, Christmas, they want to give us money. So I left her. I go upstairs. For some reason, I go downstairs again. This time, I see that she has a debit card with her. So I asked her, what are you doing with your debit card? If they want to transfer money to your account, where do they need your debit card? Now she's giving the guy a debit card. And then I'm asking her, and the guy says, is that your mother? She says, yes. So they gave me the phone. I pretend like an old woman. I say, yes, my son, what's happening? He said they transferred the money, but for her to get the access to the money, she has to give him the current PIN so they can restate it. My house help was going to do that because she was focused on 200,000 naira that the guy said had been promised to people who, palliating from COVID. So I think we need some education. We need education that is effective, awareness that is effective in local jingles, radio. The way we sing, we have all these songs when people are advertising their products, let's do those kind of adverts to protect people. So while there's regulation, I think there's also some work to be done in terms of education and awareness. I think both of them have to work in tandem. However, I know that banks also do quite a bit in terms of investigations, and once it's proven, your money will be refunded.
All right, so it seems as if you're on the side of the bank saying, listen, they are doing something on resolution, but a lot of the times we're careless with our own data, and especially when promises are made, we are free with information. And so, can I ask Mr. Edet? Mr. Edet, you know, when we talk about hacking and putting around a SOC, NIDA promised us that they were going to establish a national cybersecurity research center. And they said we're going to go into partnership with government of Malaysia and we'll all be safe, Canada, and it will have a cyber incident response center. You know, it all sounded very interesting and we breathed a sigh of relief. How far would that project with NIDA, Mr. Emmanuel Edet?
Well, if I recall properly, that project was muted in 2017. Now, NIDA has changed its approach to research because NIDA does not only deal with cybersecurity, we deal with a lot of other different IT areas. So now we are taking a different approach through creating centers of excellence in tertiary institutions, where we think it's better and more appropriate to have people carry out this type of research. We eventually established the Computer Emergency Response and Readiness Team, which is currently residing in NIDA for the federal government, and then we are connected with the National Computer Emergency Response Teams, which is housed with the Office of the National Security Advisor. So those particular activities are being implemented, but in a different manner, because establishment of a center, getting a building, and all those kind of things was going to be a lot of financial investment from NIDA area. So we thought about ways to achieve these same objectives using a distributed method. And let us remember that cybersecurity has to involve as many stakeholders as possible, because a single point of failure in terms of policy development and even actual action and activities would create more damage. So we feel that stakeholders should be involved in it, not just to build a center and bring people to come and do research, but let's go to where people are actually doing research and inject cybersecurity into the research items and make sure that we get what is the best intellectually as far as cybersecurity research is concerned.
Thank you very much. And are you getting the desired results or not yet?
Not yet.
Not yet.
But I'm sure we have moved from A.
All right, thank you. Are there any more questions from the audience in the question and answer? Okay, if there are, can you read one for us?
Thank you. So I'll go ahead and read one. We have this. Give an overview of the provisions of cybersecurity, of the Cybersecurity Act 2015 in dealing with cyber criminals and getting justice for cyber victims.
All right. So this seems as if it was baked for the lawyer. Mr. Edet, yes. Over to you.
Yes, sir. I'll take that on. The Cybercrime Act actually is the cybercrime and not cybersecurity. The Cybercrime Act was signed into law in 2015. It criminalizes certain actions using the internet or any other electronic means for the purpose of committing crimes. That's actually the focus of the Cybercrimes Act. So the provisions of the Act are designed in such a manner that it gives law enforcement the ability to prosecute people for committing certain crimes. The president has the power to designate certain computer systems and networks as critical and vital to national security. So you have your telecommunications networks, your banking networks, and the president is supposed to provide guidelines on how those networks are actually managed. It also prescribes death penalty for an offense committed against such a system. If hackers are found guilty, they are liable to pay up to 10 million naira or imprisonment for 5 years, depending on the purpose of the hack and the results they get from the hack. It makes identity theft a crime. It also makes child pornography a crime. Cyber stalking and cyber bullying are also crimes under this act. And then it forbids the distribution of racist and xenophobic materials. It forbids unlawful access, and it requires that service providers should retain traffic and subscriber information for a certain period, as may be regulated by the telecoms regulator, in order to assist law enforcement to gather information for the purpose of prosecution. And it allows for interception of electronic communication based on court order. That's just the legal aspect of the Cybercrime Act. We should also understand that it's not just the legal aspect that actually matters. There's also the institutional framework. There's an office for prosecution of cybercrime in the Attorney General's office. They deal with any cybercrime that has been reported to them, and they would prosecute anybody that is responsible for that particular crime. So in a nutshell, that's all that the Cybercrime Act is actually about. It also provides for what is called a Cybersecurity Advisory Council. Now, this council is made up of all stakeholders, government, outside government, ministries, and private sector participants, including non-governmental organizations, who would meet at least quarterly to discuss and advise government on issues to be addressed as far as cybercrime and cybersecurity is involved. So that's the whole picture of what the Cybercrime Act looks like as it is today. I know there's been some issues that have been raised about some provisions of the Act, which tend to be more commercially inclined, and those issues are being addressed as the Act is being reviewed. Thank you very much.
Mr. Manuel, thank you for this insightful share, and I'm hoping that some of these answers to the questions will be published to people that attended this webinar. They're very useful. Last question, Wumi, goes to you. So this is about COVID. Returning to the workplace after COVID-19, what should boards be thinking about, Wumi? Wumi, you're on mute.
Hello. Okay. So first, obviously, when you're going back to the office, like many people are going back now, safety of the staff is a key thing that should be on the uppermost in the minds of board members. I would expect that you should consider safety first. So, for instance, what are the seating arrangements? Have you considered how to ensure that you're applying things like social distancing? Are you ensuring that you have a roster to ensure that people don't have everybody coming in at once? What plans do you have, or that have you put in place to ensure that those safety measures can continue to operate when people come back to the office? Secondly, what mechanisms do you have to identify if someone suddenly becomes infected? What's your response mechanism? How do you deal with that? What's your escalation procedure? You know, it was okay when everybody went home and we're not coming to the office. Now people are coming to the office and they're going to be coming through all sorts of transportation mechanisms. And, you know, so how are you going to identify when people have been infected? In small companies outside Nigeria, we have companies who are putting their staff under, testing their staff on a regular basis. Obviously, in Nigeria, we're not able to do that because as a country, we don't meet about 300,000 tests. But once your staff displays any kind of symptom, what's your escalation procedure? How do you respond? How do you clean? How do you ensure that people can continue to come to work safely? And then I think also, how do you continue to operate your business with your limited staff? It was okay when we said the office was shut down, we weren't working, or we're doing things virtually. Now you're back at work, people will expect the same rate of response. So how are you going to continue to ensure that you can do that? And if a key staff suddenly becomes unavailable, how are you going to address that? Then in terms of even the services that you're going to start delivering or offering, you have to sit down and determine what am I going to bring on online first or on-site first? What are my critical services? What do I need to ensure that people continue to keep and I continue to collaborate with my customers? Then of course education. You have to continue to education. You have to continue to educate your employees and stakeholders and visitors to your premises so that nobody takes their eye off the ball. Sometimes it seems as if we have gone into the relaxed mode and people think we have forgotten that COVID-19 is still on the rampage. So how do you ensure that you can continue to educate your staff? So I would say continuous education of staff, safety of staff, how you can continue to operate in this time as you go back, and how do you continue to do business if somebody becomes infected once they're back in the office?
Umi, thank you very much. Before I hand over to Mr. Alimi, I'd like to mention that there's a WhatsApp group that's been created, and you will hear more about it from the organizers. Mr. Alimi, thank you for the opportunity to share insights at this webinar. On behalf of the panel, we say thank you, and on behalf of the participants, we also say thank you. And thank you to the participants for being a very lively audience. Mr. Alimi, over to you, please. Is Mr. Alimi with us? If not, then
I am here, Mr. Okere.
All right, Mr. Alimi.
Thank you very much. And my role is quite simple. We have tackled in the last almost 2 hours the issue of cybersecurity. No doubt it's something that has become even more in the front burner, especially now that everybody, willingly or unwillingly, has had to transfer their businesses virtually, and a lot is happening online. And we go there. I have learned something very important today. Yes, you do so much in terms of the facilities, equipment, and so much, but what about the people? And incidentally, with the poll we have here today, which says there's so much you have to do with the people. That man, you gave an internet password, a password to the company, and he has his laptop open at home and has his kids playing with the laptop, and is not conscious of the risk that he puts the company to, because as far as he's concerned, this is a personal thing. So these are little issues that seems to escape the concentration or the attention of those of us who are supposed to be in charge of ensuring that we safeguard the companies. Before I go into the appreciations, let me confirm here the presence of the President of the Institute of Directors Nigeria, Chief Chris Kumawa. Yes, just like we said, we have some technology glitch as we were beginning, and he wasn't able to join us as early as he wanted to, but he's been here since then. Mr. President, we thank you for making it. I want to say thank you first to you, Mr. Okere. You are our own, and we know you always do anything for us, but we don't take it for granted at all. Thank you very much. It's been a wonderful session. And I want to say a very big thank you to Wumi, Mrs. Wumi Adetukumbajayi. That was a very deep insight into the issue of I realized that if Dr. K didn't stop you, you could go on, and it just shows your dexterity and the progress in that area. Thank you very much. I also want to thank Mr. Edet, Sir Emmanuel Edet, who very, very well represented the DG of NITSDA, and we please express our appreciation to the DG, and we know he wanted to be here. Thank you very much. And of course, to PwC, I want to say thank you very much for this collaboration. And we look forward to more of this. The Institute is always eager to collaborate, to deepen knowledge, and to always improve the quality and the competencies of our members, directors. Thank you very much. I want to thank you very much thank you very much to all the participants for their patience. And I hope we have, one way or the other, added value to you and you have enjoyed the webinar today. So, ladies and gentlemen, I hope I've not left everyone. Of course, the IOD management team and staff who are here, I say very thank you for putting this together. Well, the lesson is that we just cannot be too careful. We need to up our game and continue to be conscious. Consciousness is key. Let's not take anything for granted. Our weakest link can be our undoing. So we cannot afford to take anything for granted. Thank you very much for this opportunity, and I wish you all a very nice evening. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much. Thanks again for joining us today, and we'll see you next time. Have a good night. Thank you.